Theo Vexler's compound eyes flickered across the observation screens as another video file loaded from Earth. And the insectoid scientist felt his thorax tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name, something between fascination and deep unease. The footage showed a human male moving through a dense forest on the planet's northern continent. And Vexler had watched hundreds of such recordings over the past 3 cycles. But this particular behavior never ceased to disturb him, Commander Thalos. "You need to see this again," Vexler clicked in the Coalition's common tongue. His mandibles clacking with agitation, the Dravian commander turned from his tactical display, his scaled face reflecting the blue glow of the screens, and his tail swished once a sign of irritation at being interrupted. "Doctor, we have reviewed 73 hours of human hunting behavior," Telos rumbled, his voice a deep bass that resonated through the observation deck. "What more is there to analyze?" Vexler pulled up a split-screen comparison that he had prepared over the last planetary rotation, and on the left side played footage of a Dravian hunting pack from Thalos' own homeworld. The young Drovians moved through savanna grass with coordinated precision, but their approach was anything but quiet. They roared challenges to their prey, announced their positions to packmates with sharp barks, and the lead hunter released a bone-chilling screech meant to freeze the prey animal's muscles with pure terror on the right screen. A human hunter tracked a 4-legged creature through snow-covered terrain, and the silence was absolute. No calls, no roars. No warning sounds of any kind emerged from the human, and his footsteps made almost no noise despite the crunching snow. And his breathing couldn't be detected even with the audio enhancement turned to maximum sensitivity. The human moved for 3 full hours without making a single sound, not one vocalization, not one intentional noise, and when he finally took down his prey with a thrown projectile, even that kill was eerily quiet. "This is what concerns you?" Thalos asked, though his scales had begun to ripple in a pattern that Vexler recognized as discomfort. "Did they hunt without the proper vocal protocols?" "It's not just improper, Commander, it's impossible." Vexler's wings buzzed with agitation. "We have observed predator species from 9,472 worlds across Coalition space, and every single apex predator vocalizes during the hunt without exception." Vexler pulled up his comprehensive database, and screen after screen filled with examples. The Kryn hunted in swarms with constant chittering communication. The Matharian wolf analogs howled to coordinate pack movements. The Grellan ambush predators released subsonic pulses that paralyzed prey with fear, even the solitary hunters among Coalition species. The ones who stalked alone like the great cats of a dozen worlds still growled, hissed, or purred during their approaches because the vocalization was hardwired into their predator instincts. "Vocalization serves multiple purposes in predation," Vexler continued, pulling up his research notes. "Territorial announcement to rivals, psychological warfare against prey, coordination among pack members, and the release of hunting hormones that requires sonic expression. Perhaps humans are simply an anomaly," Thalos suggested, though his interest was clearly growing. "One species among thousands. That's what I thought initially," Vexler admitted. "But then I discovered something even more disturbing. Humans can hunt loudly when they choose to." The scientist pulled up footage from a different region of Earth, and this recording showed a group of humans engaged in what their cultural database labeled a traditional ceremonial hunt. These humans beat drums, chanted in unison, and deliberately created massive amounts of noise as they drove prey animals toward waiting hunters. "They have the capacity for normal predator vocalizations," Vexler explained, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They choose not to use them. And that choice, the deliberate suppression of every natural hunting instinct, is what makes them unique in the known galaxy." Thalos was silent for a long moment, his predator brain processing implications that his tactical training couldn't quite encompass. You're saying that humans possess voluntary control over hunting, vocalizations that every other species expresses involuntarily. Not just vocalizations, Commander. Vexler pulled up additional research files. Watch this thermal imaging footage. They can voluntarily slow their heart rates, suppress their scent glands, and control their breathing to near undetectable levels. The screen showed humans using technology specifically designed to make themselves invisible. Sound dampening materials, visual camouflage, chemical scent maskers. They've developed entire industries around becoming undetectable. Vexler continued, his voice trembling slightly. Every predator in the galaxy announces itself because the prey already knows something is hunting. The hunt is about the chase, the confrontation, the test of strength. But human prey doesn't know they're being hunted, Delos said slowly, working through the logic. Exactly. Vexler's wings buzzed faster. They're not persistence predators who chase until prey exhausts. They're ambush predators who wait in perfect silence until prey walks into killing range. And the prey never knows the predator was there. The implications hung in the air between them like a physical weight. The Council won't like this, Thalos said quietly. The Council has already approved first contact protocols for next solar cycle, Vexler replied. The diplomatic team believes humans will make excellent coalition members based on their technological development and social complexity. Does the diplomatic team know that we're inviting a species of apex ambush predators who evolved to suppress every instinct that would reveal their presence? Thalos asked. Vexler's wings drooped slightly, and he pulled up one final video file, a human child, no more than 6 solar cycles old, playing something called hide and seek with other younglings. The child stood motionless behind a tree for 17 minutes without making a single sound, barely breathing, perfectly still, waiting for the exact right moment to sprint toward the goal. When she finally moved, it was with explosive speed that caught every other player by surprise. Commander, their children play games that teach them to be undetectable, Vexler said softly. The silence isn't trained into their warriors. It's inherent to their entire species from birth. Thalos stared at the screens for a long time, his clawed hand resting on the communication console that could send a priority message to the Coalition Council. Vexler wondered if the commander would recommend delaying first contact, or perhaps even flagging humans as a potential threat species. Finally, Doz's hand moved away from the console, and he turned to face Vexler with an expression that the scientist couldn't quite read. Prepare a comprehensive report on human hunting behavior for the Council, Thalos ordered, and make sure you include every detail about their capacity for silence. Because if we're going to welcome them into the Coalition, every species needs to understand exactly what kind of predator we're dealing with. And if the Council decides humans are too dangerous for contact, Vexler asked. This scales rippled in what might have been a laugh or a shudder. Doctor, if humans are this effective at hunting prey that never evolved to hide from them, imagine what they could do against enemies who think loud intimidation is the key to victory, Talos said grimly. The question isn't whether they're too dangerous for contact. It's whether we can afford not to have them as allies. Asterisk. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood at the viewport of the Coalition embassy ship, watching Earth rotate slowly below. And the blue-green planet looked so peaceful from orbit that she almost forgot the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders behind her. The diplomatic reception hall buzzed with translated conversations as humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Coalition progressed through its 3rd hour, and representatives from 27 different species mingled with human diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. General Marcus Webb approached with 2 drinking containers, one filled with Earth whiskey, the other containing something that looked like liquid mercury. but was apparently a Matharian ceremonial beverage. "They keep staring at us," Marcus murmured, his voice low enough that only Sarah could hear. Not hostile exactly, but like we're specimens under glass. Sarah took the whiskey and sipped it. Grateful for something familiar in this surreal situation, she noticed the stares too. The way conversations would pause when humans walked past. How alien eyes tracked their movements with an intensity that went beyond polite curiosity. Dr. Wexler mentioned that our hunting behaviors have caused quite a stir in their scientific community. Sarah replied quietly, "Apparently we're something of an anomaly," before Marcus could respond. Commander Thelos materialized beside them with surprising stealth for someone covered in armored scales. "Ambassador Chun." "General Webb, I hope you are finding the reception satisfactory," Telos rumbled, his translator rendering his words in smooth English. "It's incredible, Commander," Sarah replied honestly, gesturing to the vast hall. "A month ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. And now you know you are one species among thousands," Tao said, "though I must confess, you are generating more discussion than most new contact species typically inspire." "About our hunting?" Marcus asked bluntly, his military training making him prefer direct approaches, though those scales rippled in what Sarah's briefing materials had identified as surprise or approval. "You are direct. I appreciate this quality," Thalos said. "Yes, your hunting methodologies have created significant debate among coalition xenobiologists and military strategists alike. Because we're quiet about it?" Sarah asked, genuinely puzzled by the apparent controversy. "Because being quiet should be impossible," said a new voice. And Dr. Wexler joined their small group with the clicking gait of his species. The insectoid scientist carried a portable display unit, and with visible enthusiasm, he activated a holographic projection showing hunting behaviors from various coalition species. "Every predator species we have encountered vocalizes during the hunt," Wexler explained, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "It is a neurological imperative coded into predator brain structures across thousands of evolutionary paths." The hologram cycled through dozens of examples. Pack hunters howling in coordination. Solitary predators growling as they stalked. Ambush predators releasing sonic pulses that froze prey in place. "But humans don't," Sarah said slowly, beginning to understand the source of fascination and concern. "Humans can't not vocalize according to every model of predator evolution we possess," Wexler corrected. "Yet you do, and you've built entire hunting traditions around absolute silence." Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching pride. "Noise alerts the prey," Marcus explained as if stating the obvious. "If a deer hears you coming from 100 meters away, it runs. And then you've wasted hours of tracking for nothing." "But that's the point of the hunt," Thelos interjected, his voice rising with genuine bewilderment. "The prey runs, the predator chases, and the outcome determines who is stronger, faster, more skilled." "Why chase when you can wait?" Sarah asked. And the question seemed to create a ripple of stillness among nearby alien observers. "Why exhaust yourself in a pursuit when you can position yourself where the prey will be, and simply let them come to you?" Wexler's wings buzzed frantically, and he pulled up additional data on his display. "Because ambush predation among intelligent species requires coordination, which requires communication, which requires vocalization, or hand signals," Marcus said, demonstrating by making a series of quick gestures that Sarah recognized as basic military sign language, or pre-planned positioning or written plans, or radio communication with sound dampeners. "You developed technology specifically to become more silent?" Thelos asked, and his scales were rippling in patterns that Sarah couldn't identify from her briefing materials. "We developed camouflage to become invisible," Sarah added, pulling out her personal tablet and showing images of human hunters in various concealment patterns. scent blockers to remove our smell, sound dampeners for our weapons, thermal insulators to hide our heat signatures. Why? Vexler asked. And the single word carried such genuine confusion. Because the best hunt is the one where the prey never knows you were there, Marcus said quietly. And something in his tone made several nearby aliens take an involuntary step backward. You don't want prey to fear you. You want prey to not know you exist until the moment you choose to reveal yourself. The silence that followed lasted perhaps 5 seconds. But it felt much longer. A Mytharian diplomat who had been chatting with human scientists suddenly found urgent business elsewhere. And a group of Kryn researchers clustered together, with their antennae touching in what Sarah's briefings, identified as emergency consultation mode, even Thalos seemed to be, reassessing the humans standing before him with new eyes. Let me ensure I understand correctly, Thalos said slowly, choosing his words with visible care. Human predators evolved the capacity to suppress all hunting vocalizations, which should be neurologically impossible, and then you deliberately develop technology and techniques to make yourselves even more undetectable to prey and to rivals, Marcus added helpfully. Can't have competing hunters knowing where you are either. Your military forces employ these same techniques, Thalos asked. Though his tone suggested he already knew the answer, every special operations unit on Earth trains extensively in stealth tactics, Marcus confirmed, moving unseen, unheard. And undetected is fundamental to modern combat doctrine. Vexler's display unit slipped from his manipulator appendages and clattered to the floor, and the scientist made no move to retrieve it as he stared at the two humans. You weaponized your evolutionary anomaly, Vexler whispered. You took a biological capability that shouldn't exist and built your entire military philosophy around it. We just use the advantages we have, Sarah said, trying to sound reassuring. Every species does the same. Right. No species has this advantage, Thalos said, his voice rising. Stealth in coalition military doctrine means advanced sensor jamming, adaptive camouflage technology, or quantum uncertainty drives. It requires massive technological infrastructure because biological stealth is impossible for predator species. It's not impossible, Marcus said mildly. It's just unusual. Unusual is having 4 manipulator limbs instead of 6, Vexler countered, his agitation making his mandibles click rapidly. Impossible is suppressing hunting vocalizations that are hardwired into predator neurology across every known evolutionary path in the galaxy, yet humans do it as naturally as breathing. Sarah exchanged a glance with Marcus, and she could see her own realization reflected in his eyes. They had stumbled into something far more significant than a curious biological difference. Commander Thalos. Dr. Vexler, I think we need to arrange a demonstration, Sarah said carefully, watching both aliens tense, not to threaten or intimidate, but to help the coalition understand what human capabilities actually entail. A demonstration, Thalos echoed. Let your best warriors attempt to hunt a human team in a controlled environment, Marcus offered. We'll show you exactly what our biological stealth looks like in practice. Thalos and Vexler exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes. Despite their different species, I will need to consult with Coalition Military Command, Thalos said finally. This type of exercise requires significant planning and safety protocols. Of course, Sarah agreed. We want this to be educational, not alarming. But as Thalos and Vexler moved away to their respective communication stations, Sarah heard the Dravian commander mutter to the insectoid scientist in a voice that wasn't quite quiet enough. Too late for not alarming. Doctor, I'm already terrified. I haven't even seen what they can actually do when they're trying to hide. The jungle of Octurus 7 pressed in from all sides with oppressive humidity and the constant buzz of alien insects that sounded almost but not quite like Earth varieties. And Lieutenant James Ghost Ramirez checked his team's positions through hand signals that made no sound whatsoever. The Coalition had designated this entire valley as the training ground, roughly 15 square kilometers of dense vegetation, natural obstacles, and terrain that Coalition military planners assured everyone would be fair to both parties. Ghost suspected the planners had never actually met a Marine. Scout sniper, if they thought dense. Jungle was anything but perfect human territory. Through his earpiece came the whisper-quiet voice of Corporal Lisa Jiang. Positioned 300 meters to his northeast. Coalition team just entered from the southern approach. I count 15 combatants. Mixed species. Copy that, Ghost vocalized. The throat mic picking up vibrations too quiet for any nearby observers to detect. Remember, we're here to demonstrate, not dominate. Make it educational. Educational, got it. Sir, came the reply from Sergeant Marcus Powell somewhere in the western sector. So we let them find us eventually. Right. Eventually, Ghost confirmed, a smile tugging at his lips. Very eventually, the Coalition team was impressive by any standard. 15 elite warriors representing 6 different species, each selected for their exceptional combat skills and equipped with their military's best stealth technology. They just weren't quiet about it. Through the jungle came the distinctive, thrumming war chant of Dravian warriors coordinating their advance, and Ghost heard the clicking communication of Kryn soldiers echoing off trees, and the deep bass pulses that Matharian shock troops use for echolocation vibrated through the air. The Coalition approach was textbook Predator doctrine advance with clear communication. Establish territorial dominance through vocalization. Flush prey from hiding with sonic pressure. Then close for the kill against any normal opponent. It would be devastatingly effective. Ghost remained perfectly motionless behind a curtain of hanging vines. His breathing slowed to 4 breaths per minute. His camouflage uniform blending so completely with the vegetation that even he occasionally lost track of where his body ended, and the jungle began 3 meters away, close enough to touch a Dravian warrior. Passed by without the slightest awareness. South. Team passing my position. Ghost vocalized when the Dravian was safely out of audio range. 0 awareness, proceeding to objective. The objective was simple enough. A flag mounted on a pole in the center of the valley. First team to reach it and hold it for 5 minutes. One Ghost had no intention of going anywhere near that flag until the Coalition team was thoroughly demoralized 2 hours into the exercise. Commander Thelos watched the overhead tactical display from the observation bunker with growing agitation. And beside him, Dr. Vexler continuously adjusted sensor settings as if better calibration might somehow reveal where the human team had vanished to. This is impossible, Thalos muttered for the 7th time, his tail lashing with frustration. We have full thermal imaging, motion sensors, acoustic triangulation, and biosignature detection, all covering the entire valley. The sensors show movement consistent with local wildlife, Vexler reported, his mandibles clicking nervously, but nothing indicating human presence anywhere in the operational zone. They have to be there, General Webb said mildly from his position behind the 2 aliens, clearly enjoying their confusion. I mean, they didn't just teleport away on the main screen. The Coalition team had split into 3 groups and was conducting a methodical sweep pattern that should have encountered something. The Dravian squad leader's frustration was audible as he barked orders to expand the search pattern. There, Vexler suddenly chittered, manipulating the display to focus on a specific sector. Motion detected near the western ridge, thermal signature consistent with human body temperature. Thelos immediately relayed coordinates to the Coalition team, and 6 warriors converged on the location with weapons ready. They found nothing except some disturbed vegetation that might have been caused by wind. False alarm. The Kryn squad leader reported. No targets located. The humans are playing with us, Delos growled, his predator instincts recognizing a hunting pattern he'd never encountered before. They're deliberately revealing just enough presence to make us chase shadows. Can your warriors do that? Commander, Webb asked with infuriating politeness. Control their thermal signatures and movements, precisely enough to trigger sensors without being caught. Tellus's scales rippled with embarrassment because the answer was obviously no 3 hours in. The coalition team's war chants had become noticeably quieter, and their movements showed signs of the fatigue that came from maintaining constant alertness without ever finding an enemy to fight. Ghost watched through his scope as the Matharian shock trooper, assigned to the northern sector, kept looking over his shoulder at shadows that contained nothing visible. Fear was starting to set in. Primal predator fear of being hunted by something they couldn't detect. Time to give them something to focus on, Ghost decided. Signaling his team through a series of hand gestures, Corporal Jang moved first, deliberately snapping a branch 20 meters ahead of the main coalition group. The sound so foreign after hours of silence galvanized the alien warriors into immediate response. They charged toward the noise with renewed vigor and coordinated tactics. But by the time they reached the source, Jang was already 200 meters away and moving silently through terrain she'd memorized. Over the next hour, Ghost's team conducted a masterclass in misdirection sounds that drew attention to empty locations. Brief thermal signatures that disappeared before sensors could lock on. Occasional glimpses of movement that vanished when coalition warriors closed in. This is psychological warfare, Delos said in the observation bunker. They're not trying to win, they're trying to break morale. They're hunting, Webb corrected quietly. This is what human hunters do when they have time and patience. They study their prey's behavior, probe for weaknesses, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. As if responding to Webb's explanation, Ghost decided the moment had arrived. The coalition team never saw it coming. Sergeant Powell appeared behind the rearmost Kryn warrior and tapped him on the shoulder. And the alien spun around with weapon raised only to find a harmless training marker attached to his equipment. Harness eliminated. More coalition warriors went down in the next 3 minutes, each one marked by humans who emerged from literally arms reach away without any prior indication of their presence. Panic began spreading through the alien ranks faster than any war chant could rally them. Contact rear. Where did they? I can't see them. The coalition team clustered together in defensive formation, weapons pointed outward, and for 10 minutes nothing happened while they stood in tense silence. Then Jang marked 3 more warriors, simultaneously moving through their defensive perimeter like smoke, touching their equipment and vanishing again before anyone could respond. The remaining coalition forces broke formation and retreated toward the valley entrance in something that looked suspiciously like a rout. Ghost marked the final warrior himself, rising from the jungle floor literally under the Dravian squad leader's feet where he had been buried beneath 2 centimeters of loose soil and leaves for the past 45 minutes. The alien scales went completely white with shock. Exercise complete, Ghost said calmly into his radio. Coalition team eliminated 0 human casualties. In the observation bunker, silence reigned for a full minute before Delos found his voice. Replay the footage, he ordered hoarsely. I want to see every human movement from the moment they entered the valley. The playback was educational in the most terrifying sense. It showed human warriors who moved between camera frames like they could predict sensor coverage patterns, who used natural terrain so effectively that they became part of the landscape, who controlled their breathing and heart rate so precisely that biosensors classified them as small animals. Where is Lieutenant Ramirez right now? Vexler asked suddenly, his compound eyes darting around the observation bunker. He reported mission complete over 20 minutes ago. but never arrived for the debriefing. Webb smiled slowly, and Thalos felt something cold crawl down his spine. "Ghost, you can come out now," Webb said into the device from behind Commander. Thalos, close enough that the Dravian could feel breath on his neck, came a quiet human voice. "Been here the whole time. Sir figured the Commander might want the full demonstration experience." Thalos spun around to find Lieutenant Ramirez standing less than a meter away in the corner where he had been motionless for the entire debriefing. The Dravians' predator instincts finally overrode his military discipline, and he hissed a long, low sound of pure fear. "How long?" Thalos demanded. 22 minutes. "Commander," Ghost replied, "wanted you to see the exercise footage without distraction." Darzyr Vexler made a sound that the translator interpreted as a stress vocalization, and his wings buzzed erratically. "You were in this room, this secured military observation facility, for 22 minutes without anyone detecting you. The door was open during the personnel rotation 18 minutes ago," Ghost explained. "Basic infiltration technique, move when everyone's focused elsewhere." Thalos looked at General Webb with new eyes that saw not an ally. The Korvax war drums could be heard from orbit, a sound so deep and primal that it resonated through ship hulls and made crew members instinctively bare teeth or raise defensive spines or release pheromones of challenge war leader Krathek stood at the viewport of his flagship, watching the human colony world below with savage satisfaction. Haven's Reach was a farming colony, barely 3,000 human settlers, spread across fertile valleys where they grew crops and raised livestock in patterns that reminded Krathek of prey species. The intelligence reports said the colony had minimal military presence, just a small defense force designed to handle local wildlife, perfect prey. And the fact that these particular prey happened to be human made the conquest even sweeter, given how the Galactic Coalition was treating the new species like they were something special. "Begin landing operations," Krathek commanded, his voice carrying the harmonics that made his crew respond with instinctive obedience. "I want 5,000 warriors on the ground within the hour. Show these humans what it means to face the Korvax horde." The landing ships descended through Haven's Reach, atmosphere with engines screaming and war drums beating a rhythm that had conquered 17 species. Before humanity ever achieved spaceflight, the Korvax way of war was simple: land with overwhelming force, intimidate the enemy into submission through sonic dominance and displays of strength, then accept surrender from populations too terrified to resist. Captain Elena Kozlov watched the landing from her command post in the colony's main settlement, and her jaw tightened as sensor readings showed the sheer number of ships incoming: 5,000 warriors against a colonial defense force of 300 men. The odds were roughly 17 to 1. "Evacuate civilians to the forests," Elena ordered, her voice steady. "Adults grab emergency packs. Children stay with designated guardians. Move quickly but don't panic." "The forests?" questioned Lieutenant Park, her second in command. "Shouldn't we be fortifying the settlement?" "Can't fortify against those numbers," Elena replied, pulling up tactical maps showing the massive forest zones surrounding their cleared areas. "But we can disappear, and forests are where humans have the advantage." The colonial population moved with practiced efficiency. Haven's Reach had run emergency drills monthly because the coalition border was never truly safe. Families grabbed pre-packed supplies and headed for the tree line in organized groups that melted into the vegetation within 15 minutes. By the time the first Korvax warriors touched down in the settlement center, landing with a collective war cry that shattered windows and sent local wildlife fleeing. They found buildings mostly intact but completely empty. Krathek's triumph soured into confusion as he surveyed the abandoned settlement, and his warriors spread through streets and structures with weapons ready, but finding nothing to fight. The war drums continued beating, because Korvac's doctrine said never stop the psychological assault. But intimidating empty buildings felt suddenly hollow. Where are they? Krathak demanded, his threat display fully extended in frustration. Thermal signatures detected in the forest zones, reported his sensor operator. Consistent with human colonist dispersal patterns, appears to be an evacuation rather than military deployment. They're hiding like prey animals. Krathak sneered. Very well, if they want to be hunted. We'll hunt them. He ordered 2,000 warriors into the forests with instructions to flush out the colonists and bring them back for processing. The Korvax had extensive experience hunting resistant populations through difficult terrain, and their method was proven effective across dozens of worlds. The warriors entered the forests in hunting packs of 50, beating drums and releasing war cries that echoed through the trees. The sound was designed to drive prey out of hiding and into the waiting weapons of other packs positioned at forest exits. What happened next would become required study in every coalition military academy. The first hunting pack disappeared 6 hours after entering the forest. Their last transmission was confused, shouting about colonists who had been spotted but then vanished. And then silence, equipment failure. Krathak's communication officer suggested, "The forest canopy is dense. Perhaps it's interfering with our signals. Send another pack to investigate," Krathak ordered, "and tell them to maintain discipline. This is a simple hunting operation, not a military engagement." The second pack found the first pack's equipment drums, weapons, armor carefully arranged in a clearing with no sign of the warriors who had been carrying it. Discovery was disturbing enough that the second pack's leader requested immediate extraction before extraction could arrive. The second pack also went silent by the end of the first day. 8 hunting packs had entered the forest and none had returned. Krathk stood at the forest edge staring into green shadows that revealed nothing while his war drums beat steadily. Behind him, the sound that had always meant victory now seemed to mock his confusion. 400 warriors. Krathak said quietly, "Gone without a trace, no bodies, no blood, no signs of combat. The humans must have hidden military forces we didn't detect." His second-in-command suggested, "Perhaps coalition special operations units providing covert support. Then where are the weapon signatures?" Krathak countered, "Where are the energy discharges? The explosions? The sounds of battle? There is nothing coming from that forest except our own war drums echoing back." On the second day, Krathak sent a full 1,000 warriors in coordinated assault, multiple packs entering from different angles, maintaining constant communication, using aggressive drum patterns to flush out any ambushes known of those warriors came back either in the forest. Elena Kozlov moved silently through territory she and her people had been farming and exploring for 3 years. Every tree, every game trail, every water source was mapped in her head and in the heads of the 3,000 colonists who had disappeared into the wilderness. The Korvax were loud, so phenomenally loud that tracking them required 0 effort. Their war drums announced their positions from kilometers away, and their coordination chants meant Elena always knew exactly how many warriors were in each pack. "Pack of 47 moving through Sector 7, whispered Marcus Chun, one of her farmers who had spent 20 years in military service before retiring to colonial agriculture. "They're heading straight for the canyon trap. Let them get fully committed before we close the exits." Elena replied, her voice barely a breath. "Remember, we don't kill, we capture, and we do it silently." The Korvax pack entered the narrow canyon following drum signals they thought indicated fleeing colonists. The Bogi Porvax pack entered the narrow canyon following drum signals they thought indicated fleeing colonists. The Voin indicated fleeing colonists. Canyon walls amplified their war cries into something truly impressive when they were exactly where Elena wanted them. The humans struck. It wasn't combat in any sense the Korvax recognized. There were no battle cries. No weapon discharges. No dramatic confrontations. There were just colonists dropping from overhanging rocks with tranquilizer darts, nets, and simple physical force. The Korvax warriors found themselves disarmed and restrained before they even understood they were under attack. Humans worked in complete silence, except for whisper-quiet coordination. And within 10 minutes, the entire Korvax pack was secured, stripped of weapons and equipment, and marked with tracking beacons. Leave them alive. Take their gear. Move to next position, Alina ordered, and her people vanished back into the forest, leaving 47 very confused and very quiet Korvax warriors sitting bound in a canyon. This pattern repeated across the forest over the next 3 days. Korvax packs entering with drums and war cries, confident in their intimidation tactics. And then silence as the forest swallowed them whole on the 5th day. Krathak stood at his command console staring at casualty reports that made no sense. 2,000 warriors had entered the forest. 0 had returned, and orbital surveillance showed nothing. The forest canopy was too dense for detailed scanning, but thermal imaging should have detected large-scale combat acoustic sensors, should have picked up weapons fire or at least the sounds of struggle. There was nothing except the fading echoes of Korvax war drums that stopped transmitting one by one. War leader. We should bombard from orbit, his tactical officer suggested. Burn the forests and eliminate whatever is hiding there. Those are our warriors in there. Krathak snarled. 2,000 of the horde. Are you suggesting we kill our own? I'm suggesting we don't send any more into that death trap, the officer replied. And for the first time in Krathak's military career, he heard something in a subordinate's voice that should never exist. Fear. They're colonists, Krathak said, but his voice lacked conviction. Farmers and settlers with minimal combat training. They can't simply eliminate 2,000 horde warriors without making any sound. From the forest came silence absolute. Total silence that was somehow more terrifying than any battle cry. Krathak realized with cold certainty that he had made a fundamental miscalculation about human colonists. They weren't prey. They were predators who had been waiting in ambush since the moment his ships entered orbit. Every war drum, every battle cry, every coordination chant had just been telling the humans exactly where to find their next targets. Establish defensive perimeter around the settlement, Krathak ordered, his voice hollow. No one enters the forest. We wait for coalition response in the forest. 3,000 human colonists continued their silent watch. Commander Thelos arrived at Haven's Reach with a coalition rapid response fleet, expecting to find a massacre. And what he found instead was somehow more disturbing than any battlefield carnage. Korvax invasion force huddled behind defensive barriers, while the forest surrounding them pressed in with suffocating silence. Status report, Talos demanded as his shuttle touched down in the settlement center where Korvax warriors stood with weapons pointed outward at trees that revealed nothing. War leader Krathak approached, with his threat display completely retracted, a sign of submission that the Lows had never expected to see from a Korvax. Commander, 2,000 of my warriors entered that forest, Krathak said quietly, gesturing toward the tree line. None have returned. We've detected no combat. No weapons fire, no sounds of battle. None, Thalos echoed, his tactical mind trying to process how 2,000 trained warriors could simply vanish. The colonists are in there, Krathak continued, and his voice had gone flat. They've been in there since the invasion began. We know they're there because sometimes we see movement. Hear a branch snap, catch a thermal signature, but we can't find them. Can't fight them. Can't even determine how many there are. Thalos pulled up orbital surveillance data and confirmed what Krathak reported. The forest showed occasional signs of activity, but nothing that looked like military operations. Nothing that explained the disappearance of 2,000 Korvax warriors. I'm detecting your warriors' equipment transponders, Dr. Vexler reported from his mobile laboratory. Over 2,000 signals scattered throughout the forest, but no life signs attached to them. Are they dead? Taos asked. Dreading the answer, unknown, Vexler replied, his mandibles clicking with uncertainty. The equipment is intact, and operational weapons, armor, communication devices, all just sitting in various locations with no bodies. Before Thalos could formulate a response, his communication officer interrupted. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the forest audio only. Human source. Put it through. Thalos ordered. Captain Elena Kozlov's voice came through with perfect clarity. Calm and professional. Commander Thalos. This is Captain Elena Kozlov of Havens Reach Colonial Defense. We're requesting immediate negotiation regarding the Korvax warriors currently in our custody. The word custody hung in the air like an unexploded ordnance. Captain Kozlov. Are you saying the Korvax warriors are alive? Thalos asked carefully. All 2,047 of them, Commander, Elena confirmed. Currently secured at various locations throughout the forest zone, unharmed except for some dehydration and damaged pride, but otherwise healthy. You captured 2,000 warriors. Thalos couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Your entire colonial population is only 3,000 people. 3,012, Elena corrected. Including children, though. I should note that our teenagers did particularly well in the scouting and tracking assignments. Beside Thalos, Krathak made a sound that the translators struggled to interpret, something between a groan and a hiss. Captain, we're deploying medical teams and security forces to retrieve the Korvax warriors, Thalos said. Can you guarantee their safety during extraction? Absolutely, Commander, Elena replied. We'll guide your teams to each location. I'm transmitting coordinates now. And fair warning, some of your people might find the retrieval positions a bit unsettling. The retrieval operation took 6 hours and confirmed every disturbing implication. Korvax warriors, bound with simple rope and secured to trees in groups of 20 to 50. Their weapons and equipment stacked nearby in neat piles. Every single captured warrior wore an expression that spoke of psychological trauma they came out of nowhere. One Korvax warrior told the medical team in a hollow voice. We were following our prey into a canyon, drums beating, war cries echoing, and then they just appeared around us like ghosts, and there was no sound, no warning, no chance to fight. We never saw them approach, another warrior added, his threat display twitching erratically. One moment the forest was empty. The next moment we were surrounded and disarmed. They moved like the trees themselves had come alive. The pattern repeated across every retrieved group. Korvax warriors trained in intimidation warfare, finding themselves completely outmatched by opponents who refused to be intimidated because those opponents simply weren't there. Until they chose to be. Ambassador Sarah Chun arrived on the second day with a coalition diplomatic delegation, and she met with Thalos and Krathak in the settlement's main hall. Outside the window, human colonists began emerging from the forest in small groups, looking no different than any farming community returning from a camping trip. War leader Krathak. On behalf of humanity, I apologize for the necessity of our defensive actions, Sarah said formally, though her eyes held no apology. Your invasion force left us with limited options. Limited options, Krathak repeated bitterly. You eliminated 2,000 warriors without killing a single one. That wasn't limited options, Ambassador. That was complete dominance. We're farmers, Elena interjected from her position beside Sarah. Not soldiers. We captured your warriors because killing them would have been harder to justify to the coalition. And we prefer being good neighbors when possible. Farmers. Krathak's scales rippled with something that might have been hysterical laughter. Your children set traps that my veterans walked into without detecting them. and your elderly move through the forest like predators from nightmare mythology. We farm, Marcus Chen said mildly, having joined the meeting, but we're also human. And humans evolved as hunters long before we evolved as farmers. The skills transfer. Thalos watched the exchange with growing understanding, and he signaled Dr. Wexler, who had been compiling data with obsessive focus. War leader, I believe you've encountered something the Coalition has been trying to understand since first contact, Wexler said, pulling up his comprehensive analysis. Human predation methodology operates on fundamentally different principles than any species we've previously documented. The scientist displayed comparison footage, Korvax hunting parties with their war drums and battle cries. Then human colonists moving through the same forest in absolute silence. Every Coalition species announces predation because prey already knows predators exist, Wexler explained. The hunt is about dominance, intimidation. And the test of strength, prey runs, predator chases. Outcome determines survival. But human prey doesn't know predators are hunting until the hunt is already over. Talos continued. They evolved to hide every indication of their presence. No vocalizations, no scent markers. No territorial displays, because revealing themselves meant prey would escape. You're ambush predators, Krathek said slowly, and his voice carried the weight of revelation. Not pack hunters or persistence predators. You wait invisible and strike when prey comes to you. We're patient. Sarah confirmed. And patience combined with silence is more effective than any war drum. Dr. Wexler pulled up his final analysis. A comprehensive study that would reshape Coalition. Understanding forever. Humans possess voluntary control over hunting instincts that every other predator species expresses involuntarily. Wexler stated, they can suppress vocalizations, control physiological responses, and mask their presence to degrees that should be neurologically impossible. And they've built their entire approach to conflict around this capability. It's not just hunting, Thalos added grimly. It's how they approach everything. Diplomatic negotiations where they reveal nothing until agreements are signed. Military operations where enemies never see them coming. Even casual conversations where they can hide thoughts behind pleasant expressions. You make us sound terrifying, Sarah said with a slight smile. You are terrifying, Ambassador, Krathek replied flatly. I invaded your colony with overwhelming force, and you eliminated my entire ground force without making a single sound. My warriors are trained veterans who've conquered 17 species, and your farmers captured them like hunting animals. To be fair, we were quite hungry by day 3, Marcus commented. Those emergency rations are terrible. The attempt at levity fell flat in a room full of beings still processing implications. Commander Thelos. War Leader Krathek, I believe we've all learned valuable lessons, Sarah said formally. Perhaps we can discuss peace terms that don't involve orbital bombardment or forest warfare. The negotiations took 2 days and resulted in the Korvax hordes complete withdrawal from Coalition border. Space, the first time in their history they'd retreated without victory. Krathek signed the treaty with hands that still trembled from watching his warriors disappear into silent forests on the final day before the Coalition delegation departed. Thelos found Lieutenant Ghost Ramirez standing at the forest edge looking out over the settlement. Your colonists are impressive, Lieutenant, Thelos said quietly. They fought like experienced warriors. They're human, Commander, Ghost replied. We're all born knowing how to hide, how to wait, how to strike from ambush. It's in our genes from millions of years of hunting prey that was faster and stronger. The Korvax will never recover from this defeat, Talos observed. Their entire military doctrine is based on sonic intimidation and psychological dominance. You proved that silence is more powerful than any war drum. Noise has its place, Ghost acknowledged. But the most dangerous predator is the one you never hear coming.